TokyoLabs incubates early stage companies, particularly in the Web3 and blockchain space, that have promised to change lives and societies and really the world economic system. And so with me is the CEO and founder of TokyoLabs, Daniel Saito, to explain what TokyoLabs is all about. Let's start with that, Daniel.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yes, so TokyoLab is similar to what Bill Gross came up with in the 1990s called the Idea Labs. What we wanted to create was a studio or a venture studio, which actually creates Web3 properties or IP around Web3, starting from the building blocks with StrongNode. And as we want to build out the infrastructure components around Web3, whether it's whether it's taking idle CPU resources from unused PCs, or being able to be a significant implementation of like AWS without owning a single computer. There's similar ethos to how Uber's a taxi company without owning a taxi, or Airbnb being a hotel company without owning a hotel company. We are, or at least StrongNode is, utilizes people's PCs, unutilized resources to power our network and power Web3.
So you clearly believe in Web3 and the crypto space. What is it about this technology that makes you so confident it's going to be part of our future?
Well, I was actually a part of Web 1.0 in the very early beginnings, whether if it was building a browser, early browser for the world at Netscape. From there, it was from building an internet service provider in Japan to also an internet service provider in the United States. It was all about first building the building blocks, whether if it's actually a browser or infrastructure to actually speak to the world or to communicate with other people or to connect with other folks. In order for Web3, what they tout is that if Web 1.0 was just read only, Web 2.0 is read and write, Web 3.0 is ownership. And with that said, there's a lot to be said with ownership. And with the recent interest in NFTs and crypto, I think everybody wants to have a piece of the internet and own a piece of the internet in that sense. It's part of that, and specifically their data and their privacy. And what we want to do is, in StrongNode, we want to first instill the infrastructure and the privacy for the user, where Web 2.0 kind of was misaligned in the interests.
Yeah, no, for sure, especially the data part of it. And I think a lot of people are realizing that others are making a lot of money off of their data. So, and that's where blockchain can help with that. It can help us democratize all that. Yes. So what would you say are the possibilities of this technology, and what are the challenges?
Well, I think there's a lot of possibilities that can be made with Web 3.0. I think the fact that owning a piece of the internet and actually turning the tide in your direction and owning your own data and reselling it as you please and making money, I think the paradigm of advertising will change. I believe that you will be paid by the advertisers rather than you just sit there and watch and give your eyeballs and attentions to the advertising. I believe the model in advertising will change. I think a lot of it will be a paradigm shift in how what we saw in Web 2.0 and what we're seeing in Web 3.0 will completely change in regards to the ownerships and you owning part of your identity, as well as your data, as well as privacy. You choose whether you want to release or not. And by releasing whatever information that you want, you choose to make money against that and whatnot. So I think that is very powerful for the user in this day and age with the macroeconomic environment that's going on.
Yeah, well, and owning your data, but also owning properties in the metaverse, where you can rent out to other. I mean, just like physical properties that we see in the real world.
That's right. I think no one's ever came up with the firm answer for something like, say, universal basic income. I think this is an interesting way to look at it, where you take finances in your own hand. Financial literacy is something that you learn on your own. It's not something that is not often taught at schools or academic facilities. And if anything, Web3, if anything, since it's all about ownership, I think there's only going to be a lot around academic learning around financial literacy. I think people have to take in control of their own finances and not to sit back and just get a paycheck, but actively do something to accentuate their year-end salaries or their income in that sense. So with that said, I think technology will augment a lot of the passive income perhaps, and we saw this in the form of DeFi in that sense with crypto markets, but with NFTs and with DeFi as well as crypto. Of course, yes, they're both all highly volatile in nature, but at the same time, if you do know how to work it and educate yourself in the financial literacy of all things crypto, you'll learn the best practices. And this is kind of what we also want to not only do and train and teach, but if StrongNode was the first project that does the infrastructure, the second project is OGL. And OGL is more the visual layer, the presentation layer, where it actually is the metaverse. And as OGL is the metaverses of metaverses, it is actually it's another great way to earn passive income as well as an alternative form of income. So if you mint and if you craft something within our metaverse and mint it as an NFT and sell it to another user, you can make money from that. And as it's a free collaborative platform in that sense.
Oh, it's absolutely fascinating to think of the possibilities with this. And now, why was it important for you to create TokyoLabs and to use blockchain in order to have a wider user base?
Well, what we wanted to do is that we wanted to create business models that weren't specifically, if a token wasn't put into the use of this or this ecosystem, we wanted to also make sure that it could stand on its own with or without a token. That was first of all. Secondly, we believe that the new era is in where crypto is now an actual currency in some countries actually. And with this, we can formulate a business model with this. And with other tools within crypto, whether it's DeFi or NFTs and usage of that, we can utilize that to favor the user and perhaps make money. And we're not making them millionaires overnight, but if anything, it can augment their costs for internet or for that cost of a expensive mobile flow.
And of course, decentralization is a big part of blockchain technology. I mean, how will DAOs, how will Web3 governance be able to implement decentralization?
Well, decentralization is key, mainly because you don't want centralized organizations. Let's take a look at the Googles and Facebooks. They've accumulated a significant amount of power and a significant amount of information about yourself, and hence use that and make money. Well, with this new paradigm shift that we're trying to propose is that people can now say, wait, my privacy, my user, my self-image, and my posts are worth something, and I should be paid. And we want to start that new way of thinking that, we can make money with the data, the image, the usage of us using our mobile phones. The passive income that can be made is priceless in that sense, mainly because if Facebook looks at you, they look at you as a significant price, it's pretty expensive and overall. I forgot the exact figure right now of how much they look at you as one user equals how many $1,000s. But the thing is that with this, your data is worth something. Your presence online is worth something. Your actual network, your internet access that you provide to the world or provide to yourself can be re-provided to the world, and you can actually make money passively as well, not by only sharing your internet connection, but also your CPU resources. But then this can also, but at the same time, you could also tell your own story in your own metaverse, an OGL, where you can actually recreate your own room, or you can create your whole, your virtual self in that self, and represent yourself and tell your own story.
Yeah. And another thing that we've seen happen as tech has grown over the past 20 years is these geographical silos of innovation, Silicon Valley and the ecosystem. And it seems like the blockchain is much more, it's a decentralization again,
Right.
that you can really be innovative anywhere in the world.
That's right. One thing is that in what we saw in Web 1.0, Web 2.0 is that it was very centralized and even centralized in talent and talent meaning Silicon Valley. Now that we live in a decentralized world and anyone who understands a good chunk of JavaScript and who can move over to Solidity can actually now program smart contracts, and being able to code smart contracts means you can program your own money. And it is a decentralized world. And I think what we learned in MySQL is that one talent is not in one location. And with that, we found that talent is distributed all around the world, and they're all in different age, race, class, as well as gender.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about StrongNode for a second. I mean, how does StrongNode Edge take part in the concept of the layer 1 protocol?
So as I mentioned earlier, StrongNode is an infrastructure play. The idea is that we want to be able to collect unutilized resources on your digital devices. So whether if it's your network, whenever let's say your PC goes into screensaver mode, this is when our app goes online and basically takes data chunks to be processed. And from there, with those data chunks are for COVID analysis or genome or any data heavy type of applications, they can be used using StrongNode. And with that, we can use StrongNode to compute very hard or compute strategies, which would be very expensive using traditional compute methodologies. And so StrongNode will help do it not only for cheaper, but we're utilizing it from, let's say, an ESG standpoint, where it's utilizing resources that you would have lost just being plugged into the wall and powered on, and with you asleep at midnight. This can then take over your computer and just crunch and perhaps do something good for mankind, and maybe perhaps look for the next tag to identify cancer or something like that. Who knows?
Oh, interesting. And that's, a more green option
Yes.
for computing as well. What are the future for StrongNode?
Well, I think as long as we are we're experiencing a lot of the macroeconomic environments of supply chain, it being slow, as well as COVID and the economy kind of coming to a halt. People will need, luckily technology has infiltrated a lot of the households, and they have all these digital devices in their house. I'm sure around you have at least 2.5 digital devices around you at any given point in time. Maybe some of them are even the previously iPhone that you haven't upgraded can be reused and retooled and just run our binary, and you can actually share your unutilized resources that would probably just laid waste in your desk drawer if it wasn't plugged in and being used. So the idea is that we want to reuse, recycle, and retool old tech to be used to solve problems. It may not be powerful. I mean, these aren't dedicated mining machines that you normally mine Bitcoin from or anything. But if anything, this is just steady income that could come in that can supplement your internet bill.
No, absolutely. I think people would love some kind of steady extra income as well, and with the economy being so kind of uncertain these days.
Right.
Well, let's talk about identities. Is there a way to use a StrongNode Edge to create or to supplement identities in the metaverse?
Well, what we do with StrongNode is that we actually we set up the whole application lifecycle. We've actually come up with the whole lifecycle of if we want to create the whole infrastructure of things and be able to have a virtual supercomputer, what would be the building blocks for this? And first, one thing what we want to do is make sure that we establish identity. And by establishing identity and properly KYC you before you enter our network, because it is essentially a significant large supercomputer network that you will get access to. We wanted to make sure we know who you are, given similar to how you log into your computer daily or your mobile phone, we need a username and password. Once we establish, let's say, a network connectivity, then we want to understand how much CPU capacity you have, and how much of that is always idle. And by doing so, we can then calibrate your machine to be able to mine certain work blocks that we can send to your computer while you are in idle, and then can help process these blocks. And by processing these blocks, you make money.
And you were also CEO of Original Gamer Life.
That's right.
So that was a social impact ecosystem, a gaming multiverse platform that really worked on overall holistic health for users. Right. So talk about your experience creating games for SEGA, and then what were the most common problems that you saw in terms of gaming and solutions that Original Game Life could offer?
Well, when we first came up with the solution with SEGA a long time ago, this is when SEGA Dreamcast was first released, and it was the first console to have a network capability. And at that time, it had a modem and a Ethernet module that you could pop in and out of the Dreamcast. And with that, we created an internet service provider and a gaming network specifically for Dreamcast consoles. So you could say that Dreamcast consoles were the first network consoles or network games that were played on consoles in the very first interim of this whole video game saga. But with this, that was like the late 90s, early 2000s when that happened. So we wanted to revisit that 20 years later and see if we could provide an infrastructure for gaming or for gamers, not only to allow for privacy, but to also provide a network where it can be low latency for the gamers and be able to provide a secure low latency network gameplay environment, which is often a problem in gaming, because you want to have that low latency gaming capabilities to get that win. And so that milliseconds counts in network connectivity time. And so what we wanted to revisit is low latency gaming, as well as also we wanted to try to attack the toxicity in gaming. And if you I don't know if you're a player or a game player, but if you are in game forums right now or in game lobbies or chat sessions, it could get kind of toxic in natures. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a place where there's a no toxicity environment and just you're here for the game.
Yeah, nice. Well, I have a 15-year-old son, so I am very familiar with gaming, and I do hear some toxic things going on, so I know it exists.
And you do.
Yes. So there is some talk that the metaverse will be $1 trillion business opportunity at some point. I mean, what is the underlying infrastructure that is needed for that to happen? And then how would OG Life fit into the metaverse?
Well, you see this debate ongoing on Twitter or in social media that, Web3 is not going to amount to much, or Web3 has a long ways to go, mainly because Web3 has to be decentralized. And I do agree to that argument, mainly because in order for Web3 to be called Web3, it needs to be truly decentralized. Decentralized players like the Facebooks, even for us, for that matter, even StrongNode, as we're our company, unless we get our tokens out all in circulations, we're not going to be a completely decentralized play, and get all tokens into circulation and whatnot. And I think most solutions are right now still designing for centralized implementations, where it has to be more designed for decentralized applications. It's a way of thinking in an application design standpoint. It's also kind of releasing control over certain things, but it's for the common good or for the greater good of things. It's just a way of people think and how they have to think. I mean, a lot of people in the early days of free open source software didn't think that, MySQL can make money because it was free. But, we were able to choose that wrong. And in the Web 3.0 model, it's the difference between centralized and decentralized. And centralized is like the likes of Facebook and the Googles. And how do we go to that and come up with a decentralized version of that? And coming up with a network and infrastructure that is completely decentralized at play. And we need to start accumulating and aggregating all those resources to help build that. It doesn't happen overnight.
No, oh my goodness, I can't imagine. Yeah, the work that's involved to do this. And of course, a big part of decentralization is identity. And how does OG Live plan to manage people's identities?
So in OG Life, one thing is that it is the metaverse. You are an avatar. We've instituted some interesting features and functionalities in this avatar. Character design and building is really detailed and accurate. We've taken some really groundbreaking stuff from that, where we can actually have different. Even for an eyebrow, we have 255 different eyebrows, to eye shades, to hairstyles, and everything like that. We take a lot of details in this of your individual self on this metaverse. If you wanted to be a dragon in our metaverse, you could be a dragon. But if you wanted to be Jane King, you could be Jane King. And so, in our metaverse, and we could perhaps design you in the exact same likeness of it too. So. With that, it's your self-identity, and with that, with our KYC servers and onboarding, what we wanted to do is that we have an implementation similar to what we call what the industry calls a soul-bound NFT, which is actually your identity is connected to physical identities, whether it's a driver's license, passport, utility bill, something physical. So now that we know that it is connected to physical identity, that you'll be more cautious and wary of giving that away, because that is a personal document. That is something important to you. That's just an image of your likeness. Of course, you can't transfer or sell this NFT on OpenSea or anything. This is your identity, but it's on an NFT. Our system only identifies you and knows who you are. Aside from that, everything else is all scrambled and encrypted. But if you want to release your identity to any individual, you can do so at any given point in time. But at the same time, your privacy is your privacy, and we are very cautious of that. You don't release any of your information unless you do so and deem rightfully that you should release it. So, with that in mind. The identity is really key in our infrastructure in that sense.
Well, this is absolutely fascinating, Daniel. Thanks so much for sharing this and your just overall big thoughts about Web3 and where we're headed. So it's very interesting.
It is very interesting, and I'm very excited to see where it goes, and hopefully it becomes that $1 trillion market that we all are hearing about in the news. So it is something good worth working on.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.